Brought to you by Penguin.
Homecoming. Written by Ellie Dean. Read by Julie Maisey. Prologue. Burma, August 1945. Second Lieutenant Jim Reilly was stunned. He wasn't the only one. His best pal Jumbo McTavish, their fellow officers, and all the men of the Southeast Asia Command who were still in Burma were stunned too. The Americans' atomic bomb had virtually obliterated the city of Hiroshima, and yet the Japanese High Command were refusing to surrender. When the second bomb erased Nagasaki 3 days later, it was a long 5 days before the news came that Japan had finally agreed to surrender unconditionally. The great joy and relief that greeted this announcement was tempered by the memories of all the comrades that had been left behind in the jungle graves of Burma and throughout the Far East. The cost of winning the war against Japan had been brutally high. Not only to life and limb, but to Jim and Jumbo's peace of mind, which would forever be fractured by what they'd seen and heard throughout the Burma campaign. The Army Padre had held a service on the day the Japanese had surrendered, and although Jim had never been a religious man, he'd earnestly and sincerely thanked God that he'd survived and would be going home, when so many others hadn't been given that blessing. He'd also given thanks that the planned Operation Zipper to invade Malaya and capture Port Swettenham and Port Dickson in early September would not now take place, for none of the men had the stomach for more warfare. With the certain knowledge that their fighting days were over, and they'd soon be boarding a ship for home, Jim and Jumbo had set their minds to thoroughly enjoying their leave. The beaches of Rumry Island that had seen such fierce fighting were peaceful now, and the all-weather airbase that had cost so many lives to build and defend was running smoothly with almost daily flights bringing in fresh provisions, construction materials and tools, and on their departure transferring the more seriously ill patients from the field hospital to the larger, better-equipped ones in India. The pale, golden sand, stretching from the edge of the dark green jungle right to the shore of the turquoise sea, made a perfect playground now the monsoon was over. Having time on their hands and the wherewithal to make their camp more comfortable, Jim, Jumbo and the other sappers had put their skills to work on building accommodation huts, a mess hall, and a large recreation room that was open to the skies but for a canopy of mosquito netting, to garner the cooler air of evening and provide a place for the men to watch the films being brought in, listen to the comedy shows on the wireless, or hold dances. The natives, free at last from their Japanese persecutors, had put up makeshift kiosks of bamboo and canvas above the high water mark to sell their lethal rice wine, tasty snacks wrapped in banana leaves, and curries delicately flavoured with coconut and fragrant spices. Their small, slender and beautiful women had finally come out of hiding, as untouchable and remote as ever with their shy smiles and lowered eyes, but adding beautiful colour with their bright longis and jingling bracelets. Once the building work was completed and his time was his own again, Jim had bought a hammock from a Burmese peddler and strung it between 2 palm trees, where he had a good view of everything that was going on around him. Stripped to his shorts and barefoot, he'd spent a good deal of time languishing in the hammock, a crate of beer close to his hand in the shade, his sweat-stained hat shielding his eyes from the sun's glare that occasionally speared through the palm fronds. The heat was debilitating, and he'd been too lazy to talk, even to Jumbo, who'd taken to sprawling his great length in a nearby planter's chair beneath a vast umbrella to read a copious number of books he'd found in the hospital library. Jumbo's red hair and fair skin were perfectly suited to the northern climate of the Isle of Skye, but the tropics had done him no favours, and although he burnt and peeled, he never went brown, unlike Jim, whose olive skin was now as dark as polished mahogany, which made his eyes an even deeper blue. Jim had slept and dreamed of Peggy and home, of his daughters, Anne, Sissy, and little Daisy, and his sons, Bob and Charlie, of his elder brother Frank and his father Ron, and the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?